when I think about antelope, coming from where I come from and seeing them in Wyoming or seeing them drive somewhere, I have this distorted perspective of them being a higher density animal than they are. And they're not. Right. They're just visible again. So you think I shouldn't say that. In some places in Wyoming and other areas, they are a high density animal, but that's kind of a special population. Generally, they're pretty low density. They're just visible. So you see them out there, and you're not, you don't think of them as like, okay, there's 12 goats for every 4,000 acres or whatever the local density is. But when you start knocking them down that way, and they've got, 400,000 acres of national grassland to spread out on, and they've got all these giant 10, 20,000 acre ranches, you start to realize this is a low density animal, and now you have a low population of them. It was crazy how few there actually were.
Yeah, it was crazy. I mean, it's still crazy. And you've been gone, you left last Tuesday. So you've been home almost a week. Obviously I hunted all weekend. I've been out checking cameras, and I mean, the story holds the same. I think the best chance right now for success is going to be the rut, and actually having to try using a decoy and some of that stuff, because I mean the water sources are because we did get so wet in July, there's a lot of options for that few of goats. And like what we found is, and my cameras show it too, goats hit a hole a day and then they might not be back for 3 days.
Yep.
They're finding other water sources. So, it's just, it's one of those things. It's very strange. And then, hunting where we did, when we finally thought we had them figured out and we're going to go in and move in for the kill. I mean, we did have a doe come in, or 2 does come in, but that's not a normal situation. The next 3 days is going to be 101, 102, 101 here. And none of my buddies are even like, nobody's even excited. Usually that's like, oh, we're going to kill, lots of goats are going to hit the ground over the next 3 days. Somebody will probably get one, if they're out there hunting, but it's just, man, it's super frustrating.
Yeah, it's the kind of hunting you think about and you go, it's just a matter of time. I go hop in a blind. It's a matter of time, especially with, triple digit forecast. And it's just simply not the case if they have lots of options. And you had, you've got all these different tanks, private, public, that you're watching, you're running cameras on. You run into issues with cameras on the tanks because of cows. You run into issues on cameras with the tanks because of the reflection off the tanks, and it's 100 million degrees out there on the prairie. So it's more difficult than it sounds. They're spread way out in a lot of places. So you're burning through a ton of gas, 4-wheeler truck, whatever you're using. And then you have this wild card of having pastures that no cows in them and some resident antelope live in there. They got the food, they got the water, they got the place to be. And you never know when a rancher is going to move 200 head of cattle in there. And that's what we had 2 days before the season.
Yep. 2 days before the season. Yeah, I had one tank that I was really excited about to get you on. And I remember when I called and told you, it's not going to be a fun sit, because you're not going to see lots of goats. You're going to see, there was a buck and a doe coming to that tank, but they came every single day. And the blind had been out there for 9 or 10 days. And, I had everyday pictures of them coming to that tank with, the blind's been set, everything's good. And then the day before you got there, the evening before, I'm out, just checking blinds, making sure everything's set up. And then, one of the ranchers, who's a really good buddy of mine, called me and said, "Hey man, oh gosh, I hate to do this to you, but, I got to move 200 head of yearling cows onto what he calls the road pasture." And you know why? Because the way the road system works through there. And yeah, man, I mean, I had to go pull down the blind, because cattle, especially yearling cattle, they'll get caught in the ropes, they'll break it. They immediately go to it and sniff on it and push on it, and they break the poles. The first thing they do is go lick and throw snot all over the camera lens, and then they push that down and trample it. So, you just have to move that stuff. And typically when cattle go into a pasture like that, and a goat's been using a tank that he has gotten really comfortable, that's kind of like a shock to him. You got ranchers out there on horses. The semi actually came in there, and you don't just bring 200 head of cows. These came from a long ways away. A couple of semis brought them in. They're backing in there, letting cattle out. Then the ranchers are riding the entire fence line of that deal, making sure that all the fences are up and stuff. And that's just that's just things that happen.
Yeah.
But that one was kind of a blow, because that was kind of my quick, we're going to get this done and everything. So yeah.
Yeah, it sucks when the gimme goes away.
Yes.
We also had, even dealing with the low populations, we had antelope just disappear on us before the season too, and you found out why there too, which is something you have no control over and you just wouldn't expect.
Yeah, I mean, the things that there's so many things, like when you hunt, like you said, that are out of your control. There's so many things that happen that for whatever reason. I mean, that we did have a lot of other hunters on public property, that we weren't at, but is close, and close to where we were hunting. And that
I'm talking about the coyote situation.
Oh gosh, dang. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, the coyote situation, which is, when you're driving around and you're seeing more coyotes than you're seeing antelope, and then find out that there was a kind of an extermination where some planes were flown, and coyotes were exterminated and that sort of thing, days before the opener. I mean, that shifts, you've got a low flying plane, you've got, shots going on. It's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, when you think about how skittish antelope are to start with, and then you fly a plane low enough to kill coyotes with a shotgun out of it, and you're chasing them all over the prairie, you're going to move some antelope around. And so we step into that. And I always think about this coming into a hunt, because if you don't know that stuff, and this happens to whitetail hunters all the time, especially if you hunt public land, when you don't know what happened, you're dealing with stuff that might have happened yesterday. And I was telling you, I went down just recently and scouted a private farm in Minnesota, checked some cameras, put up a blind, did some stuff. And I have one cell camera down there that I'm running in the preseason, and I moved it. I put it up, and 3 hours after I left, I've got a guy standing in front of the camera. He looks like he's punching into his Onyx, this awesome trail that my camera's hanging over. And, without that, you wouldn't know, and you just think about this stuff and go, you have a lot working against you. And, those goats that got ran off by the coyote shooters, they'll come back probably, but it doesn't do you any good when you've got 4 or 5 days to hunt. And so much of that stuff just makes it unbelievably hard sometimes.
It does make it unbelievably hard, and then it makes it unbelievably frustrating, especially, truthfully, like, I mean, I've got the entire season, I've got till September 20th, but when you have a good buddy coming in, or you're taking somebody, you feel an obligation, you want to see that person be successful. And then when you have like all these factors, I mean, it was just like one thing after another, the cows got moved in on the tank, and then we find out about the coyote flyers. And, then, I mean, even though the coyote, I saw tons of coyotes out scouting and just, different factors that were working against us. And that makes it really, really frustrating, cause like you said, you can't control it. And what if, that mega giant buck you sent me a picture of, let's say that, you're amped up and you really feel like you have this buck, and he's patternable. He's on an early season food pattern. You move in, you know exactly what you want to do. You have everything right. The wind's right, but you didn't have a cell camera, and you're not going to go check your regular camera because you don't want to, he's there. Everything, all the signs say, just go in and kill him. And that guy was there. And then you're like, man, I wonder, and then you set it again. And you set it again. Then you get better conditions, and he's gone. And you're sitting there scratching your head going, was it, what was it? Was it something I did? Was it scent? Was it any number of things? When it was a guy deciding to walk a trail with his dog and scout. I mean, those are just factors that are out of your control, that, you can't really worry about, but it sure can be definitely frustrating.
Yeah. Well, we hunted 4 days, and we hunted all day, 4 days, sat blinds. We did a little spotting and stalking. We did the third day. We spotted and stalked in the morning. I have zero confidence spotting and stalking where you live.
Right.
And on that note, I want to talk about maybe if you're okay with it and your wife is okay with it, maybe we'll ask the Hunt for Real listeners to start a GoFundMe to get you guys a Uhaul so you can move out of that goddamn wasteland that you live in out there.
I knew this was gonna happen. I knew this was gonna happen. You haven't busted my butt nearly as bad as I thought you would to this point. So I was waiting for the floodgates to kind of open. But yes, we could start GoFundMoveTheBausermanFamily.com or whatever, and we do need to move. No, yeah, I know it's where where we live is definitely not everybody's cup of tea, and I tell people that all the time. I mean, out there where these antelope live, it's actually really wretched. I mean, it's really is. I mean, you've got anything that can bite you or sting you or chase you. Tony got chased by a tarantula wasp that loved his decoy, and Tony does not like tarantula wasps. And they are like the most second painful sting in the world. He had a centipede come into his blind.
Well, hold on. What? Let's talk about that freaking tarantula hawk first. So we're out spotting and stalking. I've got a bow mounted decoy, and this thing takes a liking to it or me. And a tarantula hawk, I've talked about them on a bunch here, but if you haven't seen one, just Google those bastards and tell me, just check out that nightmare fuel because they're horrible. Well, this one's like, I want to be best friends with you. And I'm starting to develop a allergy to bees. Like I get stung a lot and I'm starting to react bad. So I'm looking at this thing. I'm like, that might kill me. That's big enough to inject enough venom in me to kill me. And you're kind of like, dude, shake it off. Let's go. He'll be fine. They're not aggressive. And to be fair, they aren't, but it's like getting chased by a decent sized bird with the second most painful sting in the world. And they're all over out there. They're all over where you live. And why? Because there's a good tarantula population.
Right. They do. Yeah.
We're going to talk about that in a second. But so this thing is like all up in my business. And I am like, Jace, get me out of here. Like fear is definitely a factor for me. I need to go. And you walk up, pull your hat off, and you swing at this sucker and hit it in midair, like hard. And it's like whack. And that thing just flies away. It didn't even phase him.
They've got like an armor shell on them. They're very tough. Like I've whacked them in a blind before, and they're just extremely tough. But yeah, you got those. You got centipedes, apparently the size of a East Texas rattlesnake, which I still don't believe, but it was probably about the size of my pinky.
I'm going to tell the centipede story in a second. So the reason you have so many tarantula hawks, besides living in I envision when I'm driving away from that place and I finally start seeing some trees after about 3 hours, I envision Satan sitting there and he's like, what? Like drawing up templates for hell. He's like, well, it's gotta be super hot, obviously. I should put some cactus out there of various sizes so you can never tell which one you're going to walk into. Tarantula hawks are a definite, but this place that you choose to live, the thing that they advertise as being, hey, you want to visit this place and really have a good time with your tourism dollars? Check out the tarantula migration.
Yeah, and we do have one. I mean, it's a big deal apparently. But yeah, I mean, we get, that's why those tarantula hawks get theirs, because we do have a strong tarantula population. And here in another week and a half to 2 weeks, all the way through most of October, if you go drive those roads we're driving and stuff like that, you will just see tarantulas, especially in the mornings and late afternoons, migrating back and forth across these roads. And what those tarantula hawks do is they kill the tarantulas, and then they lay their eggs in the dead tarantula. So they're pretty sick and twisted little being as it is.
Yeah, they're not dead though. They paralyze them, lay the egg in there, and the larva grows up and eats the tarantula from like the ass end up to the head. So it's alive, paralyzed, and getting eaten. Yeah. Yeah,
it's really horrible. I'm sure it's really horrible. But yeah. So I know the first night you came in, and Amy has dinner ready, and and we're just kind of, I'm pissed because I'm like, gosh, dang, that tank I was pretty certain of too. I was like, hey, he's going to see the buck that, he's a really big buck, and turns out, like you didn't see him at all, or I don't know if you saw an antelope, and you just like, Ames, you don't have to live here, right?
Do you think
there are places in the world? There's South Dakota, there's Nebraska.
Oh my God, Nebraska. So do you think that the reason that your wife drinks so much and is so violent is because you make her live in that hellhole?
Probably that, and putting up with me.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's probably why. Except that, she doesn't drink at all, but she is very violent.
Yeah, she is. Quick to violence, one would say.
Very quick to violence. But living out here will do that to you.
Yeah, it will. So I'm sitting in the blind on day 3, and it's 100 degrees. And I'm watching those antelope go into that cottonwood water hole, and I hear something coming across the prairie. And this is a weird kind of hunting because you're not really relying on your ears at all. It's so visual because you can see for 17 miles in every direction. Yep. And other than when the heat shimmers get so bad that you can't see anything because you're literally cooking out there. But I hear something coming and I'm like, that sounds weird. Like, I know that's not an antelope. And I look, and this freaking centipede crawls underneath my blind and starts crawling like around my bag and stuff. And it's like the grossest insect. Like, I would have rather had a tarantula hawk come in, just about. And then it just walks around for a while and then it walks away. And people are like, why didn't you kill it? I'm like, I don't know if I could. Like, it's too big. And I'm just like, I'm sitting there and it's so hot that my Reese's Pieces are all globbed together and oily and melted. I'm like trying to eat a sandwich. I mean, just everything sucks. And I'm like, why do you live here? I don't get it.
And the dust. Don't forget about the dust.
Oh my God.
Ground blind.
Yeah.
Or just my truck in general, as you roll down the road and you can't glass when you stop because this overwhelming heap of dust just overcomes everything that you are. And then you get home at night and it's in your eyes and every pore of your body and your ears. And and then you're out there for 14 hours a day in that crap. And, I encourage everybody to come antelope hunting. It's super awesome.